Want to use a PGR in your cereals but have no time for a separate pass? Manipulator PGR can be applied as early as one tiller. Just add it to your herbicide to reduce lodging, increase harvest efficiency, and maximize yields. Talk to your retailer for more info and to confirm acceptable tank mixes.
I'm Lindsay Smith with Real Ag Radio and RealAgriculture.com, and joining me now is Paul Hermans with Pioneer Seeds Canada. Paul, I wish we were meeting under better circumstances, but it would appear that spring is not being kind to Ontario corn growers.
No, you take a look at what Mother Nature is throwing at us, Lindsay, and I'd rather be out in the field putting plots in today, but it is what it is. I was kind of looking back in May, and we had 14 days so far in May, and 8 out of those 14 days we've had rain, which has really slowed us down, unfortunately.
Temp's not bad, but just as you mentioned, just almost every day, every second day, rain events. Let's maybe just back up a little bit. Where are we at as far as progress? I've seen some maps that have come out as for planting progress, and we're very behind, but where are we at?
So yeah, we kind of do internally every Monday an update, and we figure for Eastern Ontario area we're about 15%, Southern Ontario more in that 30 to 40%, and then Quebec, similar to Eastern Ontario, 15. So we're, making a little bit of progress, but normally by this time we're almost complete.
Right. So, and as you pointed out, the South, there's definitely areas that have managed to avoid some of these rains in better conditions. Away we go. It really is the east and parts of Quebec that we're struggling with. And it, of course, brings up the question of, so we're May 14th, the forecast doesn't look great. And so farmers, of course, are asking that question as far as corn goes, when do I swap out those hybrids? So let's back that up a little bit as to why farmers are asking that question, why we need to, just how important is it to match that corn hybrid to the season that you've got in front of you?
Sure. So a couple of things, I guess, everyone's going to have their own risk versus reward outcome. Big differences if you're a dairy operation and you need high moisture corn, silage, that kind of stuff. But overall, growers are worried about, it's not that first planted corn, it's the last planted corn. And then what could happen, you start thinking about September, October. Do I run into a frost? Do I have low test weight, high moisture corn, and lower yield? So folks are starting to worry about that. We're moving on with May, basically. And customers are asking, should I change? And the biggest thing is basically hold the line until May 20th to the 25th with what you're currently growing is what our research data would say. We've got some great charts that would show that, and switches and everything else. And it's kind of that, May 20th, 25th time frame, May 25th more Southern Ontario. I'd say May 20th more Eastern Ontario and Quebec, those kind of things. So looking at the data, it's an emotional time. Let's really look at the research data and help that direct us to what we should be doing.
So, and it is nice to see that we've got some solid numbers to sort of lay out. As you mentioned, every farmer is going to have a different risk profile. Every farmer has different number of acres to cover. And looking at, some acres they might know are just not going to be fit for quite some time yet. And so that balancing act of trying to figure out, what goes in where and when, this question does come up. If you're going to, let's say we're a week from now, it is, the 20th, 21st, and it really does look like you're not going to be able to get into the field for quite some time. How difficult is it or easy is it to swap out to shorter season? What does that look like from sort of the seed seller's perspective on the ease of doing that?
So within Pioneer, we're looking at the overall situation. We're starting to move shorter day hybrids into the area. As we speak, we got, transport trucks coming down the 401 and moving stuff in this way. So it's easy to do, but again, it's a pain because you got to pick up the seed, bring it back and forth. And sometimes that may happen twice if the weather doesn't turn around. So fairly easy to do. What we recommend, beyond May 20th, for each additional week, you reduce your corn heat units by 100. So if I'm normally growing at 2,800, well, starting May 20th next week, 25th, we'd recommend going to a 2,700 and so forth, depending where you live in Ontario or Quebec.
What kind of yields potential difference am I looking at as I go down those heat units? How much yield do I give up, or can I maintain it based on conditions? this is the big question is, how much do I give up? Because if shorter season always meant the most yields, we'd all plant them and no one would have any risk. But clearly there's a yield difference. So what kind of difference are we looking at potentially?
So I'm going to say any good agronomist would say it depends. Depends on the hybrid and how much, you're going to go down heat unit wise. But in general, I would say if I'm going like from a 28 to a 2700, in that 5 to 8 bushel range is where I would probably peg it. And then if you keep going down again, it's going to be kind of an incremental stairs going down and everything else. Looking at planting date, though, research data would say you gain 2 to 5% on planting date. But on even emergence, I can gain 5 to 10% yield. So I'd rather make sure that, hey, we're doing a good job, have good emergence, don't mud it in. I can lose a lot more that way than I can by reducing my corn heat units.
Mm-hmm. Very good point. This is where patience, and I can only imagine how many phone calls you're getting in a day right now, but this is where patience can really pay off, that hopefully this weather gives us a window in the next week or so to really get the crop in decent conditions and not mudding it in. On the back end, we do talk about, of course, dry down. We talk about that corn actually, of course, getting to black layer and then what moisture is going to come off the combine. How much does that factor in? Because of course, if you're drying, you're paying for it. But if you've got the yield for it, maybe that pays for it. What about that end of season, as you mentioned, that consideration of the moisture conditions you might be looking at to get this corn dry?
So yeah, I had a good chart here, and hopefully you can pull that up here. Looking at Ontario and Quebec 2019 to 2021, and I kind of have it broken down. And it's not until we really get into that May 31st into June timeframe that we start seeing test weight really dropping off and moisture increasing quite rapidly. So, May 10th to the 20th, 20th to the 30th, we might gain 1 or 2 points of moisture and drop maybe a pound in test weight. So not the worst, but it's that when I start getting into June timeframe, that's when we really start to drop off, and people are going to have to really take a look at that. The other thing is, some people are also thinking, Lindsay, is, once I get into June, switch from corn to soybeans.
Right. Yeah.
But we got to keep into account. Last year we had a lot of mold in Eastern Ontario. Are we going to be going bean on bean ground? And if so, we got to think about how do we manage that, going through this growing season as well.
Yeah, and I would say, I mean, it is obviously, as soon as the calendar flips to June, that becomes a very realistic conversation of, is this a crop swap out, not just a heat unit swap out? But we have time, we hope.
Yes, we do.
So not pulling the panic switch just yet. I do want to, on this chart that we have, the corn planting date, just as a comparison, so your April 1 to May 1 planting, showing 213 bushels roughly per acre. The May 31 to June 20th, 179. So that does show that sort of, and it ticks down over the course of May as you go from the April to May. Now, so question, we had here in Ontario, we had beautiful March weather. We had almost no snow to speak of to melt at that point. But April was cold. Do you have any growers that put in pretty early soybeans or corn to try it out? Because we had that last year. We had some people going in April 15th. Did anybody pull the trigger this year? And
in my area, the earliest I think was April the 25th.
Okay.
And I had a customer planted May 1st up in Renfrew, and he sent me a picture yesterday. His corn is up and going, so he's all happy, and that's a good thing. But taking a look at the forecast, it takes 120 GDUs, growing degree units, to get the corn out of the ground. The next 2 weeks, we're calling for 400. So It's going to be quick. If we can get the crop in the ground, it's going to pop up quick and catch up, and that's going to be a good thing going forward.
Yeah. Okay. So sometimes early might pay, but we'll see. And again, it all comes down to conditions. Okay, Paul, thank you so much. We will, of course, keep tabs on this. If the weather turns around, I know that we can get a lot of crop in pretty quickly. So we'll just have to be patient and see what Mother Nature throws at us. But have a wonderful week. Keep in touch. And I hope all your growers are kind to you over the next week.
Thanks, Lindsay. Thanks for the opportunity.